You know, people often ask me, Jim, what if I try and it doesn't work? And I say, what if you don't try and it would have worked? That's life's big gamble, my friend. See, life is not a straight line. It's not tidy. It doesn't always reward the cautious. In fact, sometimes it punishes the cautious because while you're sitting around trying to play it safe, somebody else is stepping out, taking a chance, risking failure, and finding gold. Now, I'm not talking about foolish risk. I'm not saying go jump off a cliff and hope you can fly. That's not risk, that's carelessness. But what I am saying is this: you've got to be willing to get uncomfortable. You've got to be willing to go beyond the familiar, because your future is not in what you already know, it's in what you're willing to discover. See, every advancement in your life will ask something from you. A new job, it may mean moving cities. A business opportunity, it may mean sleepless nights and lean times. A new habit, it may mean saying no to the old one you've gotten cozy with. But remember this: the risk of change is always smaller than the cost of staying the same. We've all got dreams, big ones, but between you and that dream stands a gap. And you know what fills that gap? Risk. You want to cross that gap, you've got to take a step. You've got to put something on the line. Your pride, your comfort, maybe even your money, but you can't wish your way across. You've got to walk. Now I know. It's scary, believe me, I know. It's scary to launch the business, scary to pick up the phone, scary to stand up and say, this is what I believe in. But let me tell you what's scarier: sitting in the same spot a year from now, wondering what could have been if you just had the courage to take one small risk. Let me ask you, what's the worst that could happen if you take a risk? You fail. Good. Failure's a teacher. It's the tuition you pay for wisdom. The problem isn't falling down. The problem is refusing to get up again. You can come back from a failure. You can't come back from never starting. You know what the real risk is: waiting too long, waiting for the perfect time, the perfect place, the perfect guarantee. And by the time you finally feel ready, the opportunity is gone. Somebody else took it, somebody else lived it, and you're left with, if only. So I say, take the shot, make the call, start the project, say yes, say no, do the thing that scares you, because that's usually the thing that matters. Don't aim to avoid all risk. Aim to take calculated risks, smart risks, but above all, take them. Life doesn't reward the avoiders. It rewards the doers, and every doer I've ever met took a risk. So today, I challenge you not to play it safe, but to play it smart. Smart enough to know that risk isn't your enemy. It's your doorway, and the life you want, it's waiting on the other side. Comfort is one of the most deceptive forces in life. It sneaks up quietly, disguising itself as peace, as rest, as satisfaction. But the truth is, comfort is a trap when it becomes your goal. When you make comfort the destination instead of a brief resting place, you begin to stall your own progress. The world doesn't stop moving just because you've found a soft spot to sit. Life keeps evolving, challenges keep coming, and opportunities keep passing by. If you're not growing, you're slowly shrinking, and comfort, when overindulged, is where growth begins to decay. The problem with comfort is that it feels so good, so natural. It's where nothing threatens you, where you're not pushed, where there's no risk of failure, embarrassment, or uncertainty. You've got your routines. Your bills are paid. Your job feels predictable. Your habits feel easy. But this ease is where ambition starts to fade, curiosity starts to die, and passion begins to erode. Because the longer you stay in comfort, the more you build walls around yourself to keep change out. Those same walls that keep the discomfort away also block progress from getting in. We're taught to chase comfort: a nice house, a steady job, a secure lifestyle. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying the rewards of hard work. But the danger comes when comfort becomes the main objective. Because the moment it becomes your priority, growth becomes optional. You start choosing what's familiar over what's necessary. You begin to say, "I'll wait," when you should be saying, "Let's go." You start saying, "It's not the right time," when the right time was yesterday. Growth and comfort do not live on the same street. You have to leave the neighborhood of comfort if you want to enter the world of transformation. Every skill worth learning, every opportunity worth chasing, every goal worth reaching, they all require stepping beyond what you know. They require friction, resistance, effort, and yes, discomfort. But that discomfort is the birthplace of new strength. Just like muscles grow by being pushed beyond their limit, your character, your mindset, your dreams, they only grow when you stretch. People stay in bad jobs, broken relationships, and toxic environments simply because they're comfortable. Not happy, not fulfilled, just comfortable. That's the trap. The lie that says, "At least it's not worse," becomes the excuse to never make it better. You start tolerating what you were meant to change. You normalize what you were designed to rise above, and you slowly lose the sense of possibility that once lit your fire. Comfort begins to lull you to sleep. Not physical sleep, but mental sleep, emotional sleep. Dream sleep, and the longer you stay asleep, the harder it becomes to wake up. Fear plays a big role in this, the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of starting over. So we stay in comfort zones not because they're the best places to be, but because they're the places we know best. Familiarity becomes more valuable than freedom, but make no mistake, every comfort zone has borders, and every border limits what you're capable of. You can't live an extraordinary life while staying inside ordinary boundaries. You can't have the rewards of the mountain while refusing to leave the valley. Comfort wants you to wait. Growth wants you to act. Comfort says, "Take it easy." Growth says, "Get uncomfortable." Comfort says, "Don't risk it." Growth says, "You've got to try." And if you keep listening to comfort, you'll wake up one day and realize you've been sitting in the same place while time kept marching forward. That's the moment when regret hits the hardest, not because of what happened, but because of what didn't. Look around at the people who inspire you. Look at the innovators, the leaders, the visionaries. They didn't get where they are by playing it safe. They stepped into the unknown. They risked their ego, their money, their reputation. They did what was uncomfortable again and again because they understood something most people forget. Growth only happens outside the comfort zone. The magic you're looking for lives on the other side of challenge. But to get there, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable for a while. It's not easy. Your mind will try to protect you. It will say, "Stay here. This is good enough. Why make it harder?" But the goal is not to avoid struggle, it's to become stronger. The goal is not to eliminate stress, it's to rise under pressure. The goal is not to keep life easy, it's to make yourself capable of more. And that only happens when you reject comfort as the final destination and see it instead as a place to pause, refuel, and prepare for your next level. Sometimes you have to ask yourself tough questions. Am I growing or just maintaining? Am I chasing purpose or just managing comfort? Am I stepping forward or standing still in a cushioned rut? Because comfort can hide itself as stability, as wisdom, even as maturity. But real maturity is about movement. It's about the willingness to face hard truths and do what's necessary, not just what's easy. Even in nature, comfort means decay. Stagnant water breeds disease. Still air becomes stale. Trees that stop growing eventually rot. And the same is true for your dreams, your goals, your potential. If you're not evolving, you're dissolving. If you're not climbing, you're sliding. Comfort might give you a moment of peace, but it can cost you a lifetime of potential. The truth is, comfort feels good for a season, but it has a shelf life. Eventually, you outgrow it, or worse, it outgrows you. The world changes, the industry shifts, your opportunities move on. And if you haven't been stretching, adapting, taking risks, and doing the hard things, you'll be left behind. Not because you weren't smart or talented, but because you chose easy over effort. You chose familiar over freedom. You chose the couch over the climb, so you have to treat comfort like a checkpoint, not the finish line. Enjoy it, yes. Celebrate it, yes. But don't camp there. Don't retire in a mindset meant for transition. Life has more to offer than you've experienced, and it's waiting just outside your comfort zone. Every opportunity in life, whether it's a new business, a relationship, a career move, or a dream you've held close to your heart, comes with a price tag. And often, that price isn't money, it's risk. Risk is the price of opportunity. It's the toll you pay to cross the bridge from where you are to where you want to be. No meaningful door opens without some degree of uncertainty, and no real breakthrough happens without stepping into the unknown. The world doesn't hand out rewards to those who play it safe forever. Playing it safe may protect what you have, but it rarely leads to something greater. To unlock new levels in your life, you must be willing to pay the price, and that price is risk. Most people want the reward without the cost. They want the outcome without the leap. They desire the fruit but avoid the climb. But every opportunity is wrapped in a layer of uncertainty. You don't get to see the full picture before you start. You don't get to guarantee the result before you act. And that's what makes risk both frightening and necessary. If you knew for certain how everything would turn out, it wouldn't be risk, it would be routine. Risk introduces an element of the unknown, and it's within that unknown that transformation, innovation, and greatness are born. The most successful people in history, entrepreneurs, leaders, artists, inventors, all paid the price of risk. They bet on themselves when no one else would. They walked away from comfort, often alone, into territory they had never walked before. They understood that to gain what they've never had, they had to do what they'd never done. Risk was not an obstacle. It was a requirement. Opportunity doesn't come dressed in guarantees. It usually shows up in the form of a question. Are you willing to step forward without knowing the outcome? The fear of risk is deeply rooted in the human mind. We're wired to survive, not to succeed. And survival instincts tell us to avoid danger, stay safe, keep everything familiar. But opportunity never grows in the soil of safety. You can't expand your capacity by always staying within your limits. You can't discover new territory by walking the same path. Risk is the engine that drives growth. It forces you to adapt, to learn, to stretch beyond the boundaries you once thought were fixed. When you look at a moment in your life when you leveled up, when you made a leap, took a step, broke through, chances are it started with risk. Maybe you quit a job, started something new, opened up emotionally, or walked away from something that was good for the chance of something great. In that moment, you had no guarantees. You had hope, faith, and courage. You paid the price, and it moved you forward. Risk often doesn't feel like opportunity when you're in it. It feels like doubt, fear, hesitation. But it's only after the leap that you see the path clearly. Risk teaches you what nothing else can. It sharpens your instincts, builds your resilience, and forces you to confront your limits. When you take risks, you grow, whether you succeed or fail. Because even in failure, you gain experience, perspective, wisdom. You find out what you're made of. You build the internal muscles that prepare you for the next level. That's why risk is never really wasted. The cost may be high, but the return is even higher. Not just in external rewards, but in the person you become in the process. But what happens when you avoid risk? You stay exactly where you are. Safe, yes, but stagnant. Comfortable, maybe, but unfulfilled. You let potential pass by like ships in the night, and after a while, the pain of regret replaces the fear of risk. Regret is the slow poison of potential. It whispers, what if, and why didn't I, and I could have. You begin to realize that by avoiding risk, you were really avoiding life itself, because life is a series of risks. Every yes is a risk. Every no is a risk. Every change is a risk. But doing nothing is the biggest risk of all. People often wait for the perfect time to take a risk. The truth is, the perfect time never comes. Conditions are never ideal. The stars rarely align, and waiting for certainty usually leads to missed chances. You can plan, prepare, and analyze, but at some point you have to jump. You have to trust yourself enough to act before you're completely ready, because readiness is a myth. The only way to be ready is to begin. Action creates clarity, movement builds momentum, and once you're in motion, new doors begin to open. Risk doesn't always mean quitting your job or moving across the country. Sometimes it means speaking up when it's easier to stay silent. Sometimes it means asking for the raise, making the call, showing up when you'd rather hide. Risk can be big or small, public or private, but in every case, it's a test of your willingness to grow. It's a question that asks, do you want what's familiar or do you want what's possible? Only you can answer that. Only you can decide if the opportunity is worth the risk. There's also the illusion that risk is something only certain people can handle, that some are built for it and others aren't. But courage isn't a trait you're born with, it's a decision you make. It's not about eliminating fear, it's about acting in spite of it. Everyone feels fear before a big step. Everyone doubts themselves before they stretch. But the difference is that the bold take action anyway. They understand that fear is part of the process, not a sign to stop. And in pushing through that fear, they reach opportunities others never see. In every field, risk is the great separator. The ones who rise are the ones who risk. They risk criticism, they risk rejection, they risk falling short, but they also gain access to the future. They find themselves in rooms, in circles, in positions that comfort never would have led them to. They build lives that reflect vision, not just survival, and it all starts by paying the price of risk. At some point, you have to decide what kind of life you want to live. Do you want a life built around avoiding failure, or a life built around chasing purpose? Do you want to protect what you have or pursue what you could become? Because every breakthrough, every blessing, every bold new chapter will require one thing from you before it hands you anything in return: your willingness to take a risk. And when you understand that risk is the price of opportunity, you stop seeing it as something to avoid and start seeing it as the bridge to everything you've ever wanted. Regret is one of the most powerful and painful emotions a person can carry. It doesn't come all at once like a crash or a sudden loss. It creeps in slowly, sometimes over years, and settles deep within the heart. Failure, for all its sting, is often brief. It hits hard, teaches quickly, and if you're willing, it passes. But regret lingers. Regret doesn't teach as clearly because it's not based on what happened. It's based on what didn't. What wasn't said, what wasn't done, what wasn't tried. And that's what makes regret heavier than failure. Failure says, at least I gave it a shot. Regret says, I'll never know. There's something final about regret that makes it more painful than any failed attempt. Because even in failure, you get feedback, you get clarity, you learn about your limits, your strengths, your resilience. You walk away with something, but regret leaves you with a question mark. It haunts you in the quiet moments, in the spaces between your daily routine. It whispers about the road not taken, the risks not embraced, the dreams not pursued. That weight doesn't leave easily. It sits in your soul, not like a bruise that heals, but like an absence that never goes away. Failure often brings scars, yes, but those scars tell stories. They are proof you lived, you tried, you fought, and those stories become wisdom. They turn into lessons you can share, memories you can carry, and strength you can draw from. You can look back on a failure and say, I went for it. There's pride in that, even if the result didn't go your way, but there's nothing proud about regret. You don't tell stories about the time you didn't speak up. You don't celebrate the time you didn't take the leap. Regret doesn't come with memories, it comes with silence. The fear of failure stops many people from acting. But what they don't realize is that in protecting themselves from failure, they are quietly choosing regret. And regret is far more dangerous. Failure is something you recover from. Regret is something you carry. You can rebuild after a business fails. You can heal after a relationship ends. You can bounce back after being rejected. But you can't go back in time and take the chance you ignored. That opportunity is gone, and with it goes a piece of your potential. Life gives us windows, windows of time, energy, passion, opportunity. They open for a while, and then they close. Sometimes they don't open again, and when you don't move through those windows because you're afraid to fail, you don't just lose the chance, you lose the version of yourself that could have been born through it. That loss isn't loud, it's quiet, and that's what makes it so heavy. It's not just the job you didn't take, the business you didn't start, the dream you didn't follow. It's the life you didn't live. And the older you get, the more you feel the weight of those missed moments. The pain of failure fades with time, especially when you keep moving. You fall down, get back up, and eventually the fall becomes a story, not a scar. But regret doesn't fade, it lingers, because it's tied to what's unfinished. It grows heavier with age as you look back and see how different things could have been if you had just tried. And the more time passes, the more it feels like something was stolen from you. But it wasn't stolen. It was surrendered, surrendered to fear, to doubt, to hesitation. Regret is the tax you pay for choosing safety over possibility. It's the silent cost of staying comfortable, of waiting for the perfect moment, of listening to fear instead of faith. And no one escapes it entirely. Everyone has at least one thing they wish they'd done differently, but the goal isn't to live with nunnets to keep the list short. The more you risk, the more you try, the fewer regrets you have. Because even when things don't go your way, you know you were in the game, you showed up, you didn't let fear decide for you. There's a common misconception that avoiding risk keeps you safe, but the truth is, avoiding risk just changes the danger. You don't avoid danger, you just trade one kind for another. Avoiding failure might protect your ego, your bank account, or your image for a while, but it exposes you to something far worse, the slow erosion of your own potential. You begin to live a smaller life than you're capable of. You begin to settle, and soon you stop dreaming, not because you don't want more, but because you've trained yourself not to reach for it. When you look at the end of a person's life, they rarely talk about the things they failed at. They don't recount every mistake or misstep. What they talk about most, what they grieve the most, are the things they didn't do, the love they didn't fight for, the idea they never pursued, the trip they never took, the dream they always put off. That's the voice of regret, and it's louder in the lives of those who avoided risk. The people who took chances may have scars, but they also have stories, adventures, memories. The ones who didn't take chances often have quiet lives filled with what-ifs. Failure, in its essence, is a temporary stop. Regret, however, can become a permanent companion. It doesn't just affect your emotions, it affects your self-image. You begin to see yourself as someone who doesn't act, who doesn't risk, who lets fear win. That narrative becomes your identity, and once that sets in, it becomes harder and harder to break free. You begin to believe that dreams are for other people, that success is for the brave, and you're not one of them. That belief is far more limiting than any failure ever could be. To live without regret, you have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to fall short, to be wrong, to be embarrassed. You have to be willing to feel fear and move anyway, because the discomfort of temporary failure is nothing compared to the permanent pain of wondering what could have been. Regret is subtle. It doesn't shout. It whispers in the back of your mind in the quiet hours, in the moments when you pause. It says, you could have, and if you let it, it becomes the most powerful force that shapes your future, not because it pushes you forward, but because it holds you back. So you have to decide now, do you want to take the risk and live fully, even if it means sometimes falling, or do you want to avoid risk and carry the weight of everything you never tried? That's the real choice. Not between success and failure, not between ease and struggle, but between risk and regret, because one will make you stronger, the other will make you wish you had been.